After downloading the template and importing it into Unreal Engine, I noticed that all the animations are root animations, so naturally the first thing I did was converting them into in-place animations to have more flexibility in the blocking and staging phase. I also parented the camera as well as the stand-in to an empty object. Since I only had 1 week to go until the end of the challenge, I decided to go with a finished environment, and I found this amazing apocalyptic hospital by Machine Gun Studios. The texture work, the material work, the amount of details is just incomparably amazing. So I went on a virtual location scout, bookmarked some locations which I found interesting, and placed my stand-in actor into a potentially interesting location. I then deleted all the unnecessary parts of the hospital which I was sure to not use to save some resources. Then moved some geometry around just to better match my blocking and staging, and this is how it looks like. Then made some work also on the outer facade, added some light blockers on the ceiling. I also made sure to use a true-to-scale photogrammetry environment of New York City, just to make sure to have a sense of scale and to have a sense of placement and so on. Then I moved on to set dress the foreground environment with some decals and foliage and so on. I wanted to exchange the UE5 mannequin as soon as possible with my hero, so I made sure to finalize the blocking in this phase of production. Then made the environment react to the movement and exchanged the mannequin with this amazing asset I found on 3D Scan Store. Retargeted some animations, and here you see him running through the environment. Even before production started, I knew that I want to end this clip with a bang, so I bought this helicopter on Sketchfab, added a rig inside Blender, imported it into Unreal, added another FK rig, hand animated it so it crashes into the wall. Moving on to performance capture, I was using Move 1 in order to capture body movement, then imported them into Unreal Engine, retargeted the animations onto Mixamo and UE skeletons, and then I made sure to bake down the animations onto a control rig, so I have better flexibility just to correct some poses, as you've seen here. It is a bit finicky work, but it's really straightforward. For the blood splashes, I have used a Niagara emitter as well as some keyframed blood decals. For the ambers, I made a really simple Niagara emitter with a wind turbulence and some collision. And while I'm inside Niagara, I decided to create some falling debris for the background assets, which nobody in the whole wide world will notice. I do have a background as a DOP, so naturally this is my favorite part, lighting. I have used a ton of light functions, either for muzzle flashes or fire, played around a ton with contrast and shadows, played around with keyframed animations, made sure that the hero lighting outside matches the mood, used some volumetric shadow lighting, and as well as added some background lightings for the buildings. Also, in order to create some visual interest as well as break up the lighting in the background, I created this cloth simulation with a randomized wind function and imported it as an alembic into Unreal Engine. This is how it looks like in the lighting only mode. Moving on to cloth, I was using Marvelous Designer 12 in order to simulate the movement of the patient's gown. I then imported it into Unreal as an alembic hash, used the Quixel Megascans texture and customized it with a material function in combination with this amazing 8K glossy map by Cornelius Demrich. Moving on to another fun part, destruction. So I've used RBD Lab, it's an amazing plugin for Blender in order to create the windows mesh. I've then imported it as an alembic hash into Unreal Engine. I don't know, man, Path Trace Glass is just from another world. It's incomparable to Lumen in my opinion. Speaking of RBD Lab, it was also very handy when it comes to destroying the ceiling. So yeah, importing it as an alembic hash, also pretty straightforward, nothing more to say here. Except maybe for the fact that I would have loved to use Unreal Engine's internal fracturing system called Chaos Destruction, but unfortunately, as far as I know, Unreal Engine's Path Tracer doesn't support the system, so I had to rely on external software like Blender. Speaking of external software, I was using Ambergen exclusively in order to create all kinds of smoke and fire simulations. The software makes it super easy to create a ton of flipbook variations with a few clicks. I then imported them into Unreal, created a custom shader and made it so I can scrub through the flipbook animation. The workflow for creating and curating the helicopter explosion, the room fire, the ceiling destruction was a little bit different because they needed a whole lot more artistic direction. We are so close with the camera to those effects that flipbooks don't cut it anymore, so I exported all the effects as VDBs, imported them into Unreal with density and flame parameters, And I used a custom Django FX VDB shader instead of the Unreal stock one. Of course, I couldn't get around of adding a little bit of an Easter egg into the project. Here's to you, Mia. Thanks for your support. And because I hate myself, I decided to render it with path tracing merely 3 hours before the deadline. And finally, inside DaVinci Resolve, I just did a basic color correction, added the film look, some chromatic aberration, halation, glow, some film grain, as well as some edge blur to give it a more cinematic look. Additionally, I have added a bright colored overlay shortly after the muzzle flashes occur to emulate the effect of a rolling shutter sensor when a bright light flashes into the camera. I mean, yes, it's very subtle, but nonetheless, it's very cool to have it. Sprinkled it all up with a little bit of Resolve denoising magic, and there we go. That's it.